Hello and welcome to the Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. Today I have Helen with me, who's an American journalist with RT, and her writings are collected at Helen of desTroy.com. I'll put links in the comments below so you can find her after. We have our conversation about day 2, Helen. How are you feeling on day 2 of the saga that is the US elections?
It's like, I'm used to being embarrassed for my country because of all the terrible things we're doing around the world, but this is a whole new level of embarrassment. It's like we literally run around sticking guns in people's faces and saying democracy or else, and then we do this. I mean, this is a total mess, a complete, like, nobody can look at this and say, this is what democracy looks like, unless they literally can't actually see what they're looking at. Maybe they have a bag over their head because they've been put in one of our prisons on one of our black sites. Yeah, this is not what democracy looks like, guys. This is a pretty shameful show.
Yeah, I just want to get some kind of context on the circus that is unfolding. So we're now at quite a tight race between both camps. And as the votes are rolling in, as I understand, there's a lot of voting that is yet to be counted, a lot of ballots that are yet to be counted, and we won't actually have an answer. There's lots of people expecting that by midnight, when the first day of the counting finished, that we'd have an answer. Of course, that's not the case.
Yeah, it's you can kind of sense that they just have truckloads of pre-filled ballots waiting to be dumped into circulation in case the things don't seem to be going the way that they want them to. Just the idea that suddenly we can go from, okay, everybody has to vote on election day, and maybe we'll see people who aren't living here have to send in their ballots. And now all of a sudden, we're going to be given this long period in which anybody can just submit votes whenever they like. Oh, are things not going your way? Okay, bring in the truckload of Missouri votes. Or, oh, things aren't looking so good in Pennsylvania. Good, we got a truck full of votes for Biden here, or a truck full of votes for Trump here. Yeah. It's, I mean, I realize that things are probably not that blatant, but given what they've been caught doing in Florida before, I think Debbie Wasserman Schultz was the one who was caught doing this with just literally baskets full of votes that they were caught just kind of slipping into cars and stuff. It's like, this is not what a functioning democracy would be doing. This is completely off the wall.
It seems like it's absolute madness. It's who can cheat the system best and most effectively and get away with it.
Yeah,
in a reasonable-ish manner.
Yeah, and it's like, it's not just mail-in voting that's like this. Voting machines are historically the Diebold election system, which has now been cannibalized and spun off into a couple of companies, ES&S and Premier Voting Systems, has historically had very strong ties with the Republican Party. So it's like they were caught doing all kinds of funny business back in 2004, 2002, 2000 for the Republicans. So it's not like this is just a Democrat thing or just a Republican thing or just a mail-in voting thing. It's an entirely fraudulent, like on so many different levels. It's a very powerful ecosystem of fraud that has been sort of substituted for democracy when nobody was looking, because people were kept busy with like catnip social issues that don't actually really have any effect on their lives, but that they like to debate. I use that term mostly scream at each other while throwing things and calling each other bigots and stuff. So
yeah. And what can we look forward to on day 2 then? Or what can we expect? Are there any indicators that we should be looking out for on this long day that's going to be, I'm sure, as much of a roller coaster as yesterday was?
Well, I mean, obviously the swing states are the ones to look at. I heard relatively recently that Florida seemed to be going for Trump. So that would indicate that they're going to be trying to push other states for Biden. Pennsylvania, the stuff that I saw coming out of Pennsylvania yesterday in terms of just sheer, like, blatant fraud. There was a poster that was had a sample Democratic ballot filled out that was like posted right outside a polling place, and then they tried to debunk that, saying, oh, well, it was more than 10 feet away from the actual voting. Okay, so you got people waiting in line to get in, and the entire time they're waiting in line, they're looking at this poster that has a sample ballot filled in for the Democratic Party, and they're saying that that's not fraudulent because it's more than 10 feet away from the actual voting place. I'm sorry, that's ridiculous. I mean, I drove through Pennsylvania relatively recently, and it was just like nonstop Stop Trump signs. Now, admittedly, I didn't drive through cities. I didn't go to Philadelphia or Pittsburgh, but everywhere else, it's just like, I mean, once in a while you'll see a little Biden sign, or they'll try to get like a really big Biden sign, and then it's like surrounded literally by like a forest of Trump signs. And I'm sorry, if they're going to try to say that Biden won Pennsylvania, I'm gonna have to call BS on that one, because it simply is not what I saw, and I drove basically the entire length of the state, so that's kind of silly. But yeah, that being there's that, and then Arizona, they're gonna try to say is going for Biden.
I was about to say Arizona, I've read the same situation.
Yeah, and then Nevada, which Nevada is ridiculous. I mean, they were so fraudulent during the primaries that they saw in Iowa, as many people probably remember, Buttigieg people, nobody remembers who Buttigieg is anymore, but former South Bend, Indiana mayor Pete Buttigieg, his people had this caucus app that ended up basically completely distorting the results, stealing the primary from Bernie, because they gave his votes to like complete nobodies, like Deval Patrick, who again, nobody remembers who Deval Patrick is, former Massachusetts, I think governor, was he the governor of Massachusetts? I don't even remember who Deval Patrick was, but giving his votes to nobodies. And Nevada saw that and they're like, we want those guys. So they literally saw what happened in Iowa, hired those people to do their caucus. And so that's how fraudulent we're dealing with in Nevada. And they're now going to let people's votes come in as much as a week after the election. So that is literally seeing the election is not going the way that you like, finding a bushel of votes somewhere in the forest, trucking it in and saying, look, we have victory.
Votes that grow on trees.
Yeah, exactly, literally.
Yeah, but generally though, is the atmosphere quite tense? Because I've also seen that, you know, there's shops that have been boarded up in preparation. There's the gate that was constructed around the White House. Is it quite tense atmosphere?
I think it depends on where you are. I mean, yeah, I was getting the sense yesterday, at least, that this the idea of post-election unrest was kind of becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy, because yeah, you're literally seeing all of the media hyping up this, oh, they're boarding up the shops, oh, they're busing people to here and here and here, and at least in the sense of the boarding up the shops, it's like that doesn't necessarily have to happen. It's like they haven't announced any results. Trump isn't trying to claim victory. At least I haven't seen him do it yet. Maybe I'm just not looking in the right place, but I would think that if he was trying to claim victory, it would be literally all over everything. You wouldn't be able to get away from it.
I mean, I do know that he has already made a few statements about the other side stealing the election if he doesn't win, which is kind of a claim to victory.
Yeah. I mean, he's going to try to be very, well, no, he's not going to try to be careful. He's kind of a bull in a china shop, but he's probably not going to just outright say, yes, I won, unless it becomes very clear that like something has gone very direly wrong in terms of like bushels being bussed in from nowhere. But as far as post-election unrest though, like I do think something's probably going to happen in Washington, because they are actually busing people in there, and I'm not in Washington, so I don't know what the situation is like on the ground there. In New York right now, I'm not hearing reports of anything going down, but they do have the shops boarded up. I think that's more of a precautionary thing because of what happened in terms of the riots and smashing windows and everything. But I think that along the East Coast, like most of the converging is on Washington. That's where they've declared they're going to occupy things indefinitely and camp out there and basically cause a big mess. So that might take the pressure off some of the other coastal cities, just because, you know, if they're over in Washington, they're not here. And
I also saw it, just going back to the kind of inflammatory nature of the media surrounding this kind of unrest. Like I saw a lot of headlines saying what to do when Trump stages a coup, applying the theory that this hypothetically was a reality, and what to do during this reality, which I think is completely inflammatory. And I do think a lot of the time I agree. I think that it's just fanning flames.
Yeah, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. They really want Trump to claim victory so that they can then justify all of the rhetoric they've been throwing out for the past several years. But, oh, Trump is a dictator, Trump is Hitler, Trump is Mussolini. And it's like, actually, you know, when you look at what a lot of the other world leaders have done during the pandemic in terms of imposing martial law and basically locking people in their homes, Trump has been relatively mild. I mean, I hate that I'm constantly being put in the position of defending this guy, but like, he could have done a national lockdown. He could have done what Cuomo's doing on a national level, and he didn't. So, I mean, yes, there are a lot of problems with this guy. It's foreign policy, for example, is completely terrible. And unfortunately, Biden doesn't represent anything better. And that's why I don't really get that whole dichotomy. But yeah, in terms of, oh yeah, Trump's the fascist. Well, he didn't lock down the nation. It was the other side calling for him to lock down the nation. It was Fauci calling for him to lock down the nation. I do think that anybody who was duped a second time around of Trump's idea of training the swamp is kidding themselves, because it's like, I mean, I'm sorry, you're working for the swamp. The swamp is telling you what to do. He's literally admitted that the swamp is telling him what to do when he did finally impose that, like, the 1 month federal shutdown in April or March or whenever it was, basically saying, oh, I didn't want to do this, but they're saying I have to do this. Okay, who's they? We never get that. Yeah, we never get who's they, but it was pretty clear.
Yeah, I mean, that was his promise from 2016, was that he was going to drain the swamp, which of course is a monumental task, and he ended up, I think, coming privy to the swamp itself, much like most presidents in the US when they start out with good intentions, you know.
Yeah, it's like they don't realize that president is a purely vestigial role at this point. You're not actually making any policy, and just seeing the protests, the early protests by like national security people. How dare he try to make foreign policy when during the Ukraine thing, during the impeachment scandal, it was, oh, how he's trying to make foreign policy. What's wrong with him? That's our job. It's like, wait a second. I mean, and if anyone has made it through these last 4 years and still believes that the president is making the decisions in terms of what the US does, either at home or abroad, I mean, you just haven't been paying attention, because this is a bit silly.
Yeah, how important is this Senate vote? So I think it's tied at the minute between the two parties, but how much of a factor will that play in changing things, or because I know also the Democrats were hopeful to try and charge the Senate, as it were, but how much does that have an influence over what will happen in the future, in the next few weeks?
The Senate is pretty important because they've already got control of the House, and if they have the Senate as well, then that will enable them to pass basically all the harebrained legislation that the House has passed in terms of being like the basically for show resistance, the Potemkin resistance, whatever you want to call it. The Senate would actually be able to ram those things through. And if they had both houses, then they would be able to override Trump's veto, although they would need a few more than just a simple majority. I think they would need a super majority in the Senate if they were going to override Trump's veto. But still, if they got Trump out and they had tripartite control, then we'd really be looking at a serious problem. It's like, as much as, again, I'm not a supporter of the Republicans, but in some way, a gridlock can be a good thing, because if both parties are pure evil, then you don't want either of them being able to get anything done, because then that like at least protects the American people against further incursions on their rights. Both parties are just like gung-ho for, okay, how many rights can we take away now? Oh, they still have a First Amendment, let's get rid of that. Oh, Fourth Amendment, nah, screw it. And I mean, there's some talk now about like scrapping the Constitution because it's a racist document. I don't think that's a good idea, but if you get a Democratic supermajority, I don't know, something could happen.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think that Biden would go for that, but again, the president is a vestigial organ on the body of democracy right now, which I would say the patient is on life support and nearing death, but it's just my opinion living here and everything.
And is this what has come down from you, from your perspective then? Is it choosing between a lesser evil?
Yeah, I mean, it's choosing between a lesser evil. And the question is, okay, so after, I mean, I've been eligible to vote since for let me think how many elections. Several elections now. I'm not going to give away my age here, but and every time it's okay, vote for the lesser evil. You have to vote for a lesser evil. If you don't, you're not doing your civic duty as a person. And it's like, well, look at where it's got us. We've got two like people who more than half the American population polled a few months ago believes that neither candidate is mentally fit to serve in this role. Neither candidate. That's not just Dementia Joe or something. That's neither candidate. And so that's where all of these years of voting for lesser evils have gotten us. And so I think that if people don't start like looking at third parties, there are some third party candidates who actually don't suck out there. I mean, I can think of that there are two that have much better policies than Trump and Biden. And so I think people need to start considering these alternatives, because otherwise you're going to just get more and more of this, and it's going to keep going downhill.
But Helen, is the system intrinsically geared towards a two-party majority always? Like, is there room for a third party within the system itself?
Yeah, the problem is the money. It's ever since Citizens United just opened the floodgates for the money, it's been impossible for a third party to get in there and actually get the kind of visibility and the kind of support nationwide that they need to actually get in there. But there is a thing that if a third party gets a certain amount of votes in the national election, then they have to have matching funding. So if I think it was Nader in 2000 got the Green Party a certain degree of funding, or he almost did. I don't remember the exact details of that, but of course he was excoriated and attacked from all sides for stealing the vote from the extremely charismatic and winning personality of Al Gore. I mean, no, sorry, that was another race where it seemed like the Democrats were throwing it. It's like they didn't want to win. It was Bush's turn. We had to have the war on terror and all that crap. So Gore basically threw the race. And it's again, I think we're looking at a situation where neither candidate really wants to have the responsibility of presiding over what is certain to be, if not the downfall itself, at least the significant decline of the empire, because things are not looking good right now.
No, not at all. And yeah, I think that's neither candidate is particularly eager to have to take on all the troubles that they will be given immediately upon the first day in office. That's true. But also, though, with this race itself, how likely do you think it is that it's going to be a very long, drawn-out legal battle that follows the results?
Very likely.
I think it's going to be
very likely.
Very likely as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they've set us up for this again with this self-fulfilling prophecy of, oh, don't expect the results for several weeks, and oh, don't expect it's, and yeah, Pelosi is apparently putting stuff in place because she thinks the House is going to be the one to decide it. Now, I know at least in 2000 it was the Senate that ended up deciding, the Senate and the Supreme Court, but yeah, I'm guessing Trump, that she assumes to be.
Yeah, Trump has also been referencing the Supreme Court in having influence over ruling what comes next. And I think right now Trump is making a lot of noise about legal action, while Biden's kind of preaching patience, just to say that we need to wait, which we all know. But I also do know that ballots, you're never going to have a finished reading on the first day of election. That's just not a thing. That just does not happen anyway. But to have weeks and potentially longer than weeks ahead of us is a very strange situation. Very strange situation.
Yeah, and I don't know how much people are going to put up with that. I think that might end up with people starting to take to the streets of like, what are they hiding? Why is this taking so long? And I know that they've tried to inoculate us against that in terms of like all the social media outlets saying, okay, we're going to crack down on distribution of content after the election because we don't want unrest and blah, blah, blah. But that's actually made people more suspicious because they're like, okay, the social media platforms are all in on it and this and that. And it's definitely doesn't help that some states have put a hard and fast cut on voting in terms of after election day, which, you know, makes sense if you're thinking about fair elections, not that we have those. Fair election, I mean, election day should be the last day, you know, that's logical. But this idea that people can keep voting, oh, we need more Democrats, here, come down. Oh, we need more Republicans, come down to your local polling place. And so it doesn't look good from the outside. And it used to be the U.S. was concerned about its image abroad. Of course, it's been a long time since that was the case. But it is kind of funny if you look at how, you know, we're literally running around the world delivering democracy at the point of a gun, or delivering what we call democracy at the point of a gun. And now it's like anybody who's suffered through a US-led war and is now looking at the US like, okay, so you killed all of us for this. This is great. And oh, we're supposed to emulate this. And obviously there are plenty of US deposed democracies that have had similar snafus in terms of their own elections. But I don't think anybody really expected it to happen here in such a blatant and obvious way.
Yeah, I that's exactly true, that the eyes of the world are on the US right now, as is its own citizens feeling, and I think feeling the tension and the pressure from probably in diluted form myself, like in very diluted form, because I'm trying to like have a bit of a cleanse from everything now and again, because it gets very intense. But at the same time, like the US presidency is a question that matters to the world. It's not just mattering to the US. And it's an important question that people watch over carefully. And to see it now go into what I expect to be a long period of limbo, it is actually quite concerning, because during that period of limbo, how much can people take before they can't take anymore, or want answers, or start to question the system itself, you know?
Yeah, and how many like individual lawmakers are going to revolt? We already had the House try to stop the confirmation of Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court because they were basically trying to take revenge for what the Republicans did with Merrick Garland, which, I mean, and that was a bit of a hypocritical thing there, that it's like, oh, well, they didn't let them confirm the one guy in this situation, and same thing with the next. It was a little bit dodgy, but at any rate, the fact that an entire half of a House of Congress could just revolt because they don't think that the leader is going to be around for much longer. I mean, I think we're going to see that in other ways. I know that there's been talk of trying to pass this second Corona stimulus. Yeah. And there's a lot of American people who basically are looking at empty bank accounts. And if not for the CDC eviction moratorium, they'd be out on the street. And so it really, there's a second stimulus payment to at least the people, if not certain, I think small businesses could use another bailout as well. I don't think that large industries necessarily need one because they've got plenty of money already. And this idea that, oh, we're just going to do a standalone bailout for the airline industry. Really? The airline industry? No, I don't think the airline industry needs any more money. They've got plenty. And if a Boeing wasn't out there making planes that crash, if you look at them funny, then maybe they wouldn't be in such dire straits. But you know, that's US industry for you. If you've got a comfortable monopoly on an industry, then there's no impetus to make it competitive in the hypothetical free market.
Priorities straight.
Definitely.
Your priorities straight. And can I ask you finally though, Helen, what do you expect? Who do you expect to win? Who is your call on this election? Do you have one?
I mean, I think if the vote was fair, Trump would probably be reelected. Yeah. This is not my personal preference. I'm not going to say what my personal preference is, but I'm just saying, if they had a fair vote, I believe the American people would reelect Trump. Not by a huge margin because he hasn't delivered on most of his promises, but there is definitely a large silent majority in terms of like they're not in with Biden's weird hybrid of neoliberal centrism and like bizarre fake left pseudo-communist, whatever, like, and very pseudo-communist. There's no actual communism, not in the sense of up with the proletariat. It's down with the proletariat, but up with the weird social controls that come with communism. I don't know if that makes any sense. It's a very, very strange little mix he's got going on there. He's completely owned by large corporations and foreign interests, but this weird, like, what's the word? something cultural Marxism, something like that, something like that. Not actual cultural Marxism, but this this weird facsimile of it that's been used to destroy the left by the neoliberal centrists, and now the real left is pretty much extinct. There's not a lot in terms of like anti-war, pro-free speech. The real left is basically dead, except for maybe a few hundred people on Twitter. And yeah, so, but I think they might try to steal it for Biden, because Trump has just put these people's panties so much in a bunch that it's like very difficult for them to deal with it. And if you look at the media at any given time, it's just been nonstop. Oh yeah, we're gonna dump Trump. There've been all these cutesy little memes where they like have Trump as the poop emoji, and like it's like, come on, guys. I remember when Trump was first elected, and I saw a sign at one of the early protests, and it had Trump, a poop emoji with Trump's hair, and I was like, oh, that's clever. That was 4 years ago.
4 years.
And they're still doing it. It's not clever anymore, guys. I'm sorry. It was cute then. Dump Trump. Oh, that's funny. Yeah, 4 years later, it's not funny anymore, dude. But yeah, so I think if they let the election go fairly, it will probably go for Trump. If they steal it, it'll go for Biden.
Interesting. I mean, I also can imagine the backlash from this will be that there's going to be both sides. A lot of people saying, not my president. A lot of hashtagging, not my president.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No. And I mean, it's like, I think even a lot of people who voted for Trump last time didn't really like Trump. They just didn't want Clinton. And again, this is what you get from lesser of two evils voting. Even the people who vote for somebody will say, oh, he's not my president. I just voted for him because I hate the other guy more. Yeah. And I think that you're going to get a lot of that again this time, because I mean, there are a lot of people who really, really hate Biden, and they only like slightly hate Trump.
And that's a defining factor, isn't it?
Yeah.
So strange. Well, Helen, thank you so much for your opinions and for your insights. And I hope day 2 goes well over there. I'll be watching from afar, although not too closely, because honestly, I can imagine this being very long and very drawn out, as you just described and explained. But best of luck, and everyone watching this video, you can find Helen on links below. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share our channel. And we'll see you next time. Thanks, Helen.
Thanks for having me.